We always talk about how our ambassadors and our partners absolutely have to be a reflection of our values as a brand and really represent that fiercely independent nature. It takes a special partner to work with a challenger brand and represent a challenger brand. It takes a special mindset. It takes a unique vision. And simply put, it takes guts.
I'm Carolyn Hadlock, Executive Creative Director at Young & Larimore, and this is the Beautiful Thinkers Project, a podcast where I ask founders, creators, leaders, and visionaries how they bring their ideas to life. As we enter these conversations with thinkers across disciplines like art, science, and business, we'll learn a little bit more about the practices and identifiers that create beautiful thinking, something defined so individually, but so universally recognizable. Welcome to the Beautiful Thinkers Project. Today I'm talking with Chris Davis, the Chief Marketing Officer of New Balance. New Balance is privately held and headquartered in Boston. The brand has been on a rapid growth streak for a while with multiple collaborations, and I'm excited to hear Chris talk about where it's headed. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the company's been in your family since 1972 when your dad bought it on the day of the Boston Marathon. Talk about how the brand is different today than the day it started or the day your dad bought it.
I think one thing that has been consistent with the brand since 1906, when the company was originated, is it always had a desire to innovate. And New Balance has always been a brand that has challenged the status quo, constantly reinventing itself and really striving to be the best, not the biggest. And that notion has really been part of our thesis for over 115 years. So whether it's something like coming out with the first running shoe over $100, whether it's making shoes in the United States, or having business strategies that are 7 to 10 years versus 3 to 5 years because we're a privately owned company, we try to do things differently. Addressing and embracing that challenger brand mindset is something that we have owned as a brand and really made and cemented part of our identity.
A lot of what I've been reading about the brand is you often refer to yourself as the 115-year-old startup.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to hear you talk about some of those examples. Some of those are older and newer. How do you think that's given you an advantage against your competition? And has there been any, drawbacks to that position?
I wouldn't say there's been major drawbacks. I do think it ultimately solidifies our culture. And we like to live by the truth that the death of all major brands in the retail, sports, and fashion space really lies in the notion of stagnation. What we've tried to do as an organization is really embrace that notion of being a 115-year-old startup company that's focused on tomorrow. Our brand mantra is fiercely independent since 1906. So the challenge that we face internally, probably more so from a product, marketing, merchandising, and identity perspective, is how we make ourselves a brand with heritage versus a heritage brand. So we embrace yesterday, but even more so embrace tomorrow, and ensure that we have a strong equilibrium of what has brought us forth for the last 115 years, but more importantly, what's going to take us to the next level over the next 115 years.
Yeah. Obviously, there are some categories where you're a leader as well, in the running category, for example, and then other categories where you are a challenger, which creates a really interesting opportunity, I would think, for you as leading the brand from a marketing perspective. How does the brand find balance between those gaps?
We wouldn't really define that as a gap. I think we look at everything we do pretty holistically and work to connect the dots in a harmonized way, whether it's if we enter a new geography or if we enter a new category. We always embrace a fewer, bigger, better approach, which ultimately goes back to wanting to be the best version of ourselves versus the biggest version of ourselves. Of course, we want to grow our individual categories vertically, meaning we want to have success in basketball. We want to have success in tennis. We want to have success in world football. However, we can also grow our brand from a horizontal standpoint and ensuring that our face of brand athletes in football, in tennis, in basketball are also integrated into our lifestyle campaigns, into our overarching brand campaigns, and really embrace that fiercely independent mindset. So it's an overarching brand catalyst and investment.
You guys have a fascinating just array of the partnerships that you've created with the athletes, as well as the partnerships you've created with, cultural leaders or activists. And I'm curious to hear, I really want to dig into that piece of it because I think that's something that you probably have helped spearhead and have brought to life. But as you think about the catalyst that you were just talking about, does the halo of having an activist and a cultural leader also help with the athletic index and piece of it and the other way? I'm just curious to hear what the dynamics are.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great question. And the best way that I can describe it is as cultural co-signing. 1 + 1 = 3 across the board. And it's funny, our signature shoe with Jaden Smith that has a sustainability story. It's radically constructed, looks like it could be a New Balance shoe, but also looks different than every New Balance shoe. That's something that our global basketball athletes and global football athletes, that's the first thing that they want.
Really? So, the Vision Racer?
The Vision Racer. They love the Vision Racer. So the fact that a vice captain of the English national team in soccer and some of the best basketball players in the world want Jaden's signature shoe absolutely demonstrates the synergies that we have across the brand. And most recently, we have been working with Jack Harlow on integration into some of his music videos. He was in a global running campaign for us, but the fact that we were so penetrated into sport culture enabled him to be more excited about the brand and want to rep the brand in his own right. So it definitely works both ways across sports and across entertainment and culture.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really appreciate about how you create these, not even collaborations, but I would say partnerships, and you talk about how you identify people, whether it's whichever world they live in, based on shared values. And I'd love to hear you talk about what those values are and what are some of the criteria that you use to select a pretty diverse group of people.
100%. So I'm a broken record internally on this, but we always talk about how our ambassadors and our partners absolutely have to be a reflection of our values as a brand and really represent that fiercely independent nature. And if you think about it, it takes a special partner to work with a challenger brand and represent a challenger brand. It takes a special mindset. It takes a unique vision. And simply put, it takes guts. And the approach that we really utilize with our ambassadors, whether it be a professional sports team, whether it be an athlete, or whether it be an entertainment celebrity, we always use the notion of partnership over sponsorship.
Yeah.
But we like to say that we don't really sponsor anyone, but we partner with a lot of different individuals and properties across the world. And what that really comes down to is a co-authored approach, meaning we're expecting a tremendous amount of off the court or off the field work from our ambassadors, and we will implement a tremendous amount of work in elevating their platform as well. A major differentiator that we utilize within our contracts with these ambassadors is that there's a component within every contract of every ambassador that New Balance works with globally and partners with globally, where there's a component where they have to give back to charity, whether it's time, whether it's product, whether it's financial resources. That is absolutely integral into enabling the brand to work in the community in the right way and elevating the partner's persona in the community the right way. Whether it's something that's global or whether it's something that's local, we mandate that there's that community integration.
I imagine you've established a really strong base in that. A lot of times, even at the partnership level, it often stops at the aesthetic piece, right?
100%. And I think we've established a B2B reputation within the ambassador and agency world where we overinvest in our partners and enable our partners to better invest in the community. And I think you said it the best way possible. I think we use our platform to accelerate our athletes and our ambassadors' initiatives in the community, their vision and their impact. And I think the most recent and probably most notable example would be partnering with Raheem Sterling, who is a global football superstar. He's vice captain of Manchester City, vice captain of the English national team. And something that really attracted him to our brand was this notion of co-authorship, both on and off the pitch. We're working with him on launching his foundation. We're working with him on ensuring that we're providing opportunities to kids in London and Manchester and Jamaica with opportunities that he was never afforded. And then also creating cool, unique lifestyle and football specific product that he'll be wearing every day. So we are at the stage now where the best indication of future behavior is our past behavior. And I think we're able to be more choiceful with those individuals who truly want to partner with us for the right and authentic reasons.
It really shines through. When you co-author, as you talk about in a very authentic way, off and on the pitch in that case, you also have to relinquish control, right? I mean, as a brand, you've definitely bought into the idea of a dialogue versus a monologue. Is there anything, other brands that are leaning into the space, any advice that you would give them for how do you retain as much control as you can, but still relinquish the proper amount to have an authentic partnership?
The key phrase that you just said is authentic partnership. And these individuals have to be an extension of your brand. However, in doing so, we'll go back to that word symbiotic. You have to be providing them with something as well. And no partnership, no relationship, no marriage, no friendship works as a one-way street. And when you're working with these individuals, they're entrusting you to elevate their platform, to be part of their vision, and we're entrusting them to be part of our brand. So if you're getting into this space, you have to have the best interests of all parties at heart. And that's when the most authentic stories will come. That's where the most beautiful product will come. And that's where you'll be able to attract a multitude of different consumers to your brand. There has to be a crossover integration of authenticity.
Well, it shows. And obviously you guys are doing a lot with the sustainability initiative, right? With the 1%. And as a company, you're committed to that. But then also giving somebody like a Jaden Smith a platform to talk about water and the creation of his new line. So I think it's really interesting that you are approaching something very dimensionally. You look at the last year and just all of the issues that have cropped up in the cultural conversation. With the partnerships you guys have, a lot of those conversations are already happening. Is there any example of something unexpected that came up from having this dialogue with these different people? Any specific initiative or any specific conversation that maybe took you in a direction you guys hadn't anticipated?
I would say last summer, one of my favorite ambassadors that we have, who's just a special, unique individual across the board, Coco Gauff. She's a young American tennis star. And during all of the moments of social injustice that occurred not only in the United States, but globally, Coco really wanted to utilize her platform, her persona, and her voice to stand up for what she believed was right. And she asked us to partner with her on that. And part of our responsibility as a brand is to amplify the messaging and the voices of our athletes, but also to stand up for what we believe is right. So we worked with Coco to help her communicate a speech that she gave in Delray Beach, Florida last summer. and utilized our platforms, our media dollars, our ability to create unique content to amplify her message. This is an area where Coco challenged us to get better in this field, whereas Jaden challenged us to get better in the field of sustainability. We accept those challenges and then in turn utilize our platform, our ways of working, our creativity, our scale to amplify their messages. And it's really an opportunity for all parties to improve and stand up for what we believe is right across the board.
Darius Baisley, tell me that story.
Another one of my favorite New Balance ambassadors. So we were just about to launch into basketball, a business plan that we had been working on for over 3 years. Only individuals within the walls of our company and our brand knew we were getting into the basketball space. At this point in time, we hadn't communicated to retail partners. We hadn't really communicated to agents or athletes yet. We were working on the product. We were working on a long-term business strategy. And surprise, surprise, at the core of everything we wanted to do was to be fiercely independent. It was to counteract the status quo and step aside from the sea of sameness that we believed that the basketball industry had become. We were discussing which athletes would be an ideal fit for our brand. Kawhi Leonard, a great New Balance ambassador as well, was at the top of that list, and he continues to be at the top of that list, performing exceptionally for our brand and the Clippers, and is just, a world-class athlete and individual. However, before Kawhi, there was a story. And there was a story of this young man who had decommitted from Syracuse University. He wanted to spend that time off working out, getting his game better, and just take a different path to the NBA than what had been institutionalized or expected or what had been convention previously. So we thought to ourselves, we have to meet this young man. He seems like he has the fiercely independent mindset that we're desiring to evoke as a brand. So Rich Paul, who is the founder and owner of Clutch Sports Group, who represents LeBron James, Darius Baisley, DeJounte Murray, Anthony Davis, came to our headquarters with Darius and his mom. And we were pitching Darius to be our first NBA athlete to help launch the New Balance brand into basketball. It was just a great fit. Darius and the team gelled well immediately. And we said, you know what, instead of sitting out a year, why don't we just have him come in and be an intern for the brand? He can work out at gyms nearby. He can work out 3 times a day. He can play basketball. We can hire a strength and conditioning coach. And then in between those sessions, he would help us develop our social media strategy for basketball. He would help us develop products for basketball and then just overall content. We brought him to focus groups at local high schools, and he was just like fully immersed into the brand and had a 100% legitimate internship for a course of months. And it was the first time ever that an athlete signed with a brand to be an intern first and then a professional athlete second.
What an amazing story. You talked a little bit about some of these partnerships and how they have benefited the brand. I mean, obviously, everybody looks at sales. That's an easy dimension. What are some of the other dimensions of success that you see come from these partnerships?
From a marketing standpoint, the key metrics that we look at are Google Search Index, AAV and MAV social, which is adjusted ad value and max ad value. We look at web traffic. We look at social media followers, which has doubled since 2019. We look at social sentiment and social engagement, and really all of the traditional and newer upper funnel metrics that we receive from these partnerships.
Well, and it's interesting, even when I was trying to find some just adjacent territories for this conversation, hype beast came up all the time. It's interesting to see that sort of sneakerhead culture absorb and carry the brand forward as well. It seems like you have a very digital first marketing approach. Are you doing anything in traditional mediums?
We totally do things in traditional mediums. However, it always goes back to a digital first approach to accelerate earned media. And we believe having out of home, having broadcast television, exposing our brand to as many unique and new consumers as possible is the most effective way to create that surround sound ambience that we want to ensure that we're projecting. So with our most recent campaign, which was labeled "Impatience is a Virtue," part of our We Got Now overarching ethos for the last couple of years, it was very heavily socially driven. All of our athletes and ambassadors and partners posted on their respective channels, but we're also broadcasting it on television during the Olympics, during the NBA finals, during the Champions League finals, during the Wimbledon tennis championships. And an area where we've seen a tremendous amount of success, ironically, is out of home, particularly within sports specific categories. And we've really tried to be fun and cheeky with our out of home advertisements to encourage those social moments. Ironically, our out of home creative campaigns very frequently trend on Twitter because we try to ensure that it's a social moment for consumers to capture and be a little bit more provocative and take calculated risk in how we're coming to market with our ambassadors' products and stories. Another great traditional example was we took out a full ad in the New York Times a couple months ago to announce a 3-year creative director partnership with Teddy Santis,
I saw that. He's amazing.
He's great. Founder and creative director of Aimé Leon Dore, who has been a long-standing partner of New Balance. He's actually coming on board for the next 3 years to work in unison with our marketing, product, and design teams in creatively leading our Made in USA footwear collections. So a great way to announce that with the most heritage, authentic product that we have as a brand. We thought that the New York Times would align nicely with that storytelling. But similarly to our out of home, that took storm on social. It took storm in avenues like Hypebeast, Highest Nobiety. So that physical digital connection is something that we strive to connect the dots with regularly.
Yeah, it's so important. It really is. So it's where the synergy really happens. We talked previously about sort of the halo effect of the activists and the athletes and the cultural influencers upon each other. How has that helped move the sale of your core product?
It goes back to serving as an overall brand catalyst, which ultimately sell more 574s and more t-shirts, right? We always say that when the 574 is healthy, our brand is healthy. And conversely, we've learned that when our brand is healthy, 574 is healthy. So that's awesome. It's a great self-fulfilling prophecy.
What is a lifestyle brand that you are the most jealous of?
I wouldn't use the word jealous. I would use complementary. And right now, I would definitely say the one that I'm most complimentary of is Aimé Leon Dore. I think they have done an amazing job in making timeless, very well curated apparel collections, but also connecting with this modern streetwear consumer in a way that we haven't necessarily seen. To me, they're on the cutting edge of both the fashion spaces and the streetwear spaces. I don't think that New Balance is a jealous brand because I think we always pride ourselves on doing things differently. And I think we're always looking for partners that are doing things differently as well. And I will say that part of the success of our collaborations has been embracing the entrepreneurial spirit and embracing the entrepreneurial mindset. One thing that our collaboration team really prides itself on is finding the creators, the movers and the shakers who have their finger on the pulse of culture and who have never had a collaborative shoe before. So New Balance oftentimes give brands, individuals, and retail shops their first ever collaboration. So Casablanca is an example there. Salehi Bembury is an example there. Joe Fresh Goods is an example there. Emilion Dora is an example, but also Kawhi Leonard is an example, and Jaden Smith is an example. Finding that intersection of authentic, unique values is something that we embrace, and it's something that we look for and we love people who are breaking glass ceilings.
Yeah, I think it's part of that sort of challenger mindset is finding the up and comer. It's kind of easy to find the person who's already made it and who's already, established, but to kind of take chances on these people and then also give them a springboard, I think is very refreshing. It's so funny. You guys have so many irons in the fire right now. You're moving at this just breakneck speed, at least from my perspective, which makes me just curious about what's the approval process like inside. I mean, you must have pretty clear autonomy to be able to run and scale at the speed you guys are.
Definitely. So we like to say that we move at the speed of Instagram, which is hard to do, but a great goal to have. We have really built a culture of calculated risk taking, and we afford our associates from top to bottom to make mistakes. We just can't make the same mistake twice. And how we've done that is by operationalizing our budget to be conducive to calculated risk taking. So how we break down our budget is we really use this 50, 30, 20 mindset, whereas 50% of our budget is directly allocated to more traditional means. That could be broadcast, out of home. It could be lower funnel performance marketing, things we know that will work. 30% of our budget is allocated towards calculated risk. So that could be things that we're working in a different industry. 20% of our budget is purely dedicated to experimental marketing, not experiential, but experimental, high probability of failure. And the expectation is that if it hits, it's going to hit big. If it misses, we learn and we move on. If something works in the 20% once, it then goes in the 30%. If it works 2 or 3 more times in the 30%, then we kick it out of the 30% and then move it into the 50%. So that's how we try to create a self-fulfilling prophecy of marketing innovation and moving quickly.
Well, I mean, to have 50% of your budget essentially dedicated to calculated risk-taking is pretty amazing. And it looks like it's paid off well for you. Well, the last juncture of this conversation I'd love to talk about is part of the Beautiful Thinkers Project is the Beautiful Thinker. So kind of your story. I know you say you were born into the company, but you started working there in 2008. What is your leadership style?
I try my best to embrace a servant leadership mindset. I truly believe in a flat culture. I truly believe that leaders need to be themselves. I think they need to be vulnerable, compassionate. I also think that you really have to embrace the fact that not everyone's going to be your friend and not everybody needs to like you, but you need to make the honest, fair, and difficult decisions to have everybody respect you. So that's something that I always try to do is be honest and be fair and consistent to enable personal growth for the individual, but also department-wide and brand-wide growth for the company at large. Communication is key. Being able to communicate concepts, strategies, ideas, goals, objectives that your leadership teams understand, but also clear enough and simple enough for an intern to understand. And I think everybody wants to see their leader be human first and a business person second. So those are the things that I try to do. Honestly, there's no book on it. And you can listen to as many podcasts, take as many classes, or read as many books as you want. But I think the most important thing is to be yourself, be clear, communicative, objective, fair, and lead with consistency.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Did you, when you were growing up, did you think you'd end up at New Balance?
So I always like to say that while my sister and I were growing up, we always never really viewed New Balance as a company. We always viewed it as a sibling. Probably the favorite sibling in our family, or the favorite child in our family, was New Balance, and then probably my sister, and then me. Obviously, I have an innate passion, appreciation for the brand. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what my parents have built and how they've built it with such a great culture and a values-based approach. Sometimes I feel like it's an obligation. Sometimes I'm just overwhelmed by passion for the brand. But more so than anything, I think what keeps me engaged, competitive, and fulfilled is I love the space that New Balance is in. If New Balance was like a bank or an accounting firm or an insurance company, definitely wouldn't be working there.
Yeah. And, you read a lot about your dad, but from what I understand, your mom and dad were both pretty involved in the running of the company.
100%. And I think their partnership enabled the organization to prevail. My mom really embraced the idea of corporate responsibility and corporate giving decades ago, before it was a sexy term in our industry. And I think the foundation at large is an integral part of our brand success and helps set the tone and establish the values and the culture that New Balance strives to realize on a daily basis. The foundation is rooted in combating childhood obesity, both locally and globally, in underserved communities. So promoting healthy activity, healthy habits, education on diet, et cetera, is something where we've invested literally $100 million over the last couple of decades. And I'm amazed by their partnership and what they've been able to build, both from a business perspective and cultural perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, the last question I'll ask you, I ask everybody I interview, is this is obviously dedicated to beautiful thinking. And so how would you define beautiful thinking?
I think beautiful thinking is thinking differently. I think it's seeing beauty in the otherwise traditional or mundane. And I think it's telling new stories and bringing things to life that people haven't seen before.
Yeah, I would definitely say you guys connect dots that are definitely new thoughts and new expressions.
I mean, I think we're the only brand that could have made dad shoes cool, right? So, and that's finding beauty in everything. It's finding beauty in the mundane. It's finding beauty in what people never thought was beautiful before and giving it a facelift and telling the story through a new avenue. And I guess that's the best way that I think about it. And I think that's the way that the brand thinks about it too.
Yeah, I admire everything you guys are doing. It is just, there's a vitality to the New Balance brand that is just lovely and has no ceiling. So congratulations and thank you for your time.
Well, we appreciate your support and thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you found something that inspires you to think strange, different, new, and beautiful thoughts. This podcast was created and produced by Young & Larimore, an independent agency focused on helping national consumer brands take a stand. To explore more about today's conversation and all of the other thinkers I've spoken to, check out our blog, The Beautiful Thinkers Project, or follow us on Instagram @The Beautiful Thinkers.